Hi, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from StreetScores. We have two major topics to break down in this video, both concerning wide receivers that are now on the Washington Commanders that weren't on the Commanders in 2024. First of all, the Washington Commanders signed ex-Cowboy, ex-1,000-yard wide receiver Michael Gallup. We're going to break down, does he still have anything left in the tank? I mean, the fact that he's coming out of retirement to come here, is this the Jayden Daniels effect? We're going to do a full breakdown of Michael Gallup and who he possibly compares to skill set wise and also season wise. Is this a guy that will make the final 53-man roster or not? Also, we have his contract details as well. And then we need to talk about Deebo Samuel and his press conference that he just had with the Washington Commanders literally just a few minutes ago as I'm recording this. He talked about why he chose the Washington Commanders, and also he talked about and acknowledged the weight concerns. We're going to dive into all of that and more, but before we do, of course, I have a fun fact for you at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. And make sure you still farm that like button, still farm the subscription button, and still farm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Really appreciate y'all for pulling up and supporting every video, making it to the end of the videos as well, leaving likes, all of that. Really appreciate y'all. Javon Kinlaw is on the way. I want to do breakdowns of a lot of different things that have happened the last few days, but I've just been too busy to get those to y'all. They are on the way, I promise. Without further ado, let's go dive into this video right now, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so Michael Gallup has officially unretired and signed with the Washington Commanders. Hey, man, that boy Jayden so good. He's unretiring people right now. He's making people question, hey, wait a minute, maybe I could hop on, especially if you're a receiver. You're like, hey, maybe I could try to see what these Commanders got going on with that quarterback, man. He could probably have me out there looking good. I mean, he's going to be the best quarterback I've ever played with in my career. And, you know, remember, he's an ex-Cowboy, and I emphasize that on purpose. Dak Prescott. And then Gallup talked about Jayden Daniels with his press conference, and we're going to dive into some of his more notable quotes towards the end of the Michael Gallup half of this video. I just wanted to talk about, since we're already talking about Jayden Daniels, he said the way that Jayden Daniels can throw the ball and read defenses is uncanny. And he basically said that he just wants to be a reliable target for the second-year quarterback that's already playing at a ridiculously high level. Again, I'm gonna give you a lot more Michael Gallup quotes towards the end of his half of the video before we move on to Deebo Samuel, because I feel like he had a lot of interesting things to say in his initial press conference with the Washington Commanders. And now we got to also, at a certain point in this video, we got to discuss, is this the one and only Michael Gallup press conference that we're going to get this season? We'll get there. But Michael Gallup's deal is a one-year deal, vet minimum, worth up to $1.335 million. Up, not base, not minimum, not salary cap hit. We're talking about up to 1.335 if everything goes as well as possible. So very low risk signing. When I dive into that as well. Shouts out to Mike Garafolo. He even tweeted about the situation. This is making more news than I expected. Like, it's going a little bit more viral on Twitter. It's becoming a bigger headline than I expected, especially for the rest of the NFL to care about. But I guess there isn't much else going on, especially outside of the draft process. And towards the end of this video, we're going to talk about that, because today is one of the busiest days when it comes to pro days. Like, when it comes to the draft process and evaluating draft prospects, this is one of the busiest days of the entire offseason, especially outside of the draft. But again, I didn't expect guys like Mike Garafolo and Adam Schefter to even care or tweeted about these things, but he said former Cowboys wide receiver Michael Gallup joins former Dallas assistant Dan Quinn with the Commanders after visiting them recently. But that was days ago. What took so long to sign him? I mean, I felt like once we didn't sign him immediately after he worked out, especially after like 2 to 3 days passed, I just assumed that we were never going to sign him. I thought that was just he worked out, we didn't like what we saw, move on. But there are reports that he also visited Seattle and worked out for them as well. So maybe we gave him the vet minimum offer, which he ended up accepting. And then he went to go work with Seattle. He wanted to see if they will offer more. Maybe they offered the same amount. Maybe they didn't offer him anything. But if it's between Seattle and the Commanders and both teams are offering you vet minimums, you're going to go to the Commanders. Most notably because of quarterback alone, but also his familiarity with a lot of the coaching staff on this team, players as well, because he spent 6 seasons with Dallas. He caught 266 passes and averaged 14.7 yards per catch. That is a very high yards per catch rate right there throughout his career. Like, that's actually pretty phenomenal, but that was specifically Cowboys version of him in 6 seasons. But still, 14.7 yards per catch is playmaker. Those are explosive plays right there. Those are chain movers at the very least. 14.7 yards per catch. We need a lot of that right now because De'Ami Brown, outside of Terry McLaurin, was our only deep threat last year. Those were our only two. Now De'Ami Brown's gone. You could maybe hope that Michael Gallup could fill in there, but I'm not very confident in that. We're going to discuss that especially later. But I mean, 14.7 yards per catch, I don't think people truly understand how ridiculous that is, which made me then go look it up. Like, how impressive is 14.7 yards per catch actually? And so I wanted to go look at where people ranked just last year alone in 2024, and I'm gonna kind of skip some guys that are like guaranteed, like this is what they do, they're deep threats and they don't get the ball very often. You had DK Metcalf with this freakish athleticism at 15 a catch. You had Ladd McConkey, Georgia dog, you know what I'm saying, 14.8. Brian Thomas had 14.7 in 2024, which is the same over the course of Michael Gallup's entire Dallas career for the 6 seasons that he was there. Then you have guys like George Kittle at 14.2. Terry McLaurin had 13.8, which is less. Again, we're talking about just last year alone. But Jamar Chase, 13.4. Like, there's so many receivers that are really good that are even below that. And I'm just, it's not the end all be all, but I just want people to really understand how phenomenal 14.7 yards per catch, especially over the course of a 6-season sample size. We're not just talking about one singular year. Over the course of 6 seasons is pretty amazing. Also, Gallup had some impressive moments early in his 6-year career with the Cowboys where he overlapped Dan Quinn for 3 years, but his production dipped following a 2021 ACL tear. And it's basically as if like he never really got back to his old self after that. Like, you could just kind of tell he hasn't been the same since his ACL tear. Not everybody's Adrian Peterson. With modern medicine and technology, you're more likely to be able to recover from an ACL injury and to get back to your old self. Some people even come back a little bit stronger, but some people, just like Michael Gallup, come back and they're just not what they used to be. He's probably, I don't want to throw out a random number, but like he's like a certain percentage of what he used to be. He's not 100% of what Michael Gallup was back in, especially 2019 when he had the 1,000-yard season. But also, I do want to point out the fact that he's not as small as you think. Like, when you really watch his tape and things like that, and you hear people talk about like his weaknesses and strengths, if you're reading articles on him, if you listen to people talk about him and things like that, and again, I went and watched some of his highlights before I kicked up this video because I don't really like talking about things unless I've like literally seen at least some highlights, let alone I should be watching some all 22 film on this guy, especially of his recent years. But my main point is, when you're watching him, you kind of feel like he's a little bit smaller than he actually is. He's actually 6'1", which is an entire inch taller than Terry McLaurin, who's 6 foot flat on a good day. And then Michael Gallup is 2 inches taller than KJ Osborne. But he's 198 pounds, nearly 200 pounds as well. Pretty big built guy, considering like a wide receiver wise, and especially with his skill set, the way that he plays, you would think he's a little bit smaller. I think he's the same height as Diop. But again, he's a 6-year NFL veteran who was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in the 3rd round, 81st overall in the 2018 draft. He appeared in 86 games, making 67 starts and recording 266 receptions for 3,744 yards and 21 touchdowns. He's a native of Monroe, Georgia, so you know how I get with my Georgia guys, man. Born and raised Georgia, hey, man, the Commanders could use you, at least in my opinion. He even attended Monroe High School from that part of Georgia. Then he played college football at Colorado State University, and if y'all go back to that draft In the mock drafts I was doing before that draft, remember, I was one of the people screaming at the Commanders to please draft Michael Gallup. I've been a big fan of his since at least college. I remember a little bit in high school, but not that much. But vividly in college, I was like, man, I'm willing to take this guy probably earlier than most fans were. I remember I put him in like 2 or 3 of my mock drafts that season. Like, I wanted him bad, and then we just ended up not getting him. Now things come full circle. He's ended up on the Commanders, but I don't believe he's necessarily the same guy that I wanted out of college. But it's interesting how things work out. But he played for Colorado State University for 2 seasons, and before that, he was at Butler County Community College. And then during his time at Colorado State, he caught 176 receptions for 2,685 yards and 21 touchdowns. And in 2017, he earned consensus All-American honors and became the 4th player from Colorado State to earn that distinction. That's very notable. In his senior season, he earned first-team All-American honors by Walter Camp, FWAA, Phil Steele, and Pro Football Focus. Gallup is the single season record holder for receptions 100 in 2017 at Colorado State University. I mean, this is a guy with some serious talent and history to him. The ACL injury is really the only reason that he is who he is right now. Like, he should be better. He would be on track to being a better receiver right now, but then at the same time, we probably wouldn't have him. He'd probably be somewhere else, being like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 for another team if he never had that ACL injury. So things happen how they happen. But in 2023, very recently, Gallup played in a career-high 17 games and caught 34 passes for 418 yards, which is not good. 17 games, 34 catches for 418 yards, and only 2 touchdowns. Not very good. But in 2019, he caught a career-high 66 passes for a career-high 1,107 yards and a career-high 6 receiving touchdowns. This guy just doesn't necessarily get a lot of touchdowns, but in 2019, that man went for over 1,100 receiving yards, y'all. But then again, he suffered a torn ACL at the end of the 2021 season, and really, he's just never been back to what he was since then. And he was set to be an unrestricted free agent in 2022 when he signed a 5-year, $62.5 million extension with the Cowboys. I remember that. And Gallup was released with a post-June 1st designation just last offseason, and he later caught on with the Raiders in April. But again, the guy just retired. He decided to call it quits. But now that Jayden is a potential quarterback option for him, he's like, hey, man, maybe I should try to get that thing a go again. But we're going to talk about, he even discussed why he retired and how he was feeling mentally and things like that. We're going to get to that later. But shouts out to Matt Harmon because he brings up a good point. He said, I was a big time appreciator of Michael Gallup's work as a perimeter receiver early in his career. No idea what, if anything, he's got left coming off of a 1-year retirement, but he was the type of wide receiver who could bring that room together. Michael Gallup is like one of those types of receivers that no matter what receivers you already have on your roster, you add him, you get better. He could do so many different things, at the very least to a certain level. Like, he has a certain floor with him to where he's versatile, to where if you have a bunch of X receivers, he could be a slot. If you have a bunch of small slot receivers, he could be an X outside guy. Do you need a deep? Now, again, this is pre-torn ACL, but he can sort of be your deep threat and your explosive playmaker as well. And I do want to emphasize the fact that he did just turn 29. Shouts out to Burgundy Blog. He said, if I thought that we were getting anything close to his peak form, I'd be pretty pumped right now. But we got to see if we're even getting his just last gasp and last effort towards still playing in the NFL right now. Like, what version of Michael Gallup are we getting? Again, he didn't even play in 2024. He signed with the Raiders and then decided not to play. The only 6 seasons that he's actually played in the NFL were all for the Cowboys. When you look at his Pro Football Focus grades, I mean, even 2023, one of his most down years, they felt like he earned a 61.5 overall grade, a 62.8 before that, and then as recently as 2021, they felt like he deserved a 73.4 Pro Football Focus grade. And then you got to go back to 2019. 2020, he was decent, 66.3, but in 2019, that was his highest grade of his career. He had a 74 grade. Of course, that was the year that he had 1,107 receiving yards as well. Now, to me, this Michael Gallup signing does not stop you from drafting a wide receiver in the first 4 rounds if that's what you were planning on doing before signing Michael Gallup in the first place. And I emphasize the first 4 rounds because that's actual, real, true draft capital and an investment that you're putting into a player. If you take a guy within the first 4 rounds, you're expecting them to not only make the team, but probably contribute and even start. Outside of that, who knows? It's kind of like whatever when it comes to picking guys at those points. But when it comes to the first 4 rounds, if the Commanders already wanted to get a guy, if they were looking at a guy, maybe like a Trey Harris or something like that they wanted to get somewhere day 2, maybe very early day 3, signing Michael Gallup does not stop you from doing that. And I'm not going to lie, skill set wise, I can see him being like a potential Olamide Zaccheaus replacement in a way. But at the same time, achievement and production wise and projection wise, wouldn't be surprised if he's just a fun camp body that doesn't even make the final 53-man roster, aka the 2024 Martavis Bryant experience. I mean, you can even tell how the Commanders front office feels about him with the fact that they signed him to a vet minimum deal that only gets up to $1.3 million. Up to $1.3 million. That's the type of contract you give somebody that you don't even typically expect for them to make the roster. That's that thanks for practicing with us over the summer type of money right there. But if he exceeds expectations, then even better. This is a very, very low risk signing that has the ceiling of a receiver that isn't even 30 years old yet, mind you, and has had a 1,100-yard season before just a few years ago. Terry and Deebo are the only other receivers that can say that they've reached 1,000 yards in a season out of this entire wide receiver core that we currently have. And last year, Terry McLaurin was the only receiver that could say that he's achieved that milestone in a singular season. So there is undoubtedly a ceiling there. He's been there, done that as far as Michael Gallup goes. I'm just not confident that he'll reach it and get back to his 2019 self here in 2025. Or even his 2021 self. I'm not even confident in that. But we lose nothing by adding him to the room for this summer to practice with us. And if he makes the final 53-man roster and he's making less than $1.4 million against the cap, that's insane. That's insane value in itself. Now, also, shouts out to Commanders Realm because he brings up a good point. He said hard to really assess the Gallup signing. Obviously, Quinn liked what he saw practicing against them every week in Dallas for 3 seasons. Remember that? They crossed paths for 3 seasons. A camp body at the very least, and I have no issue with it. I completely agree. Now, Michael Gallup even spoke to the media after the signing. Well, really, it was like, we have signed Michael Gallup. Couple of minutes later, oh, here's Michael Gallup to speak to us. Like, that's pretty much how we found out that Michael Gallup was signed. Oh, Michael Gallup's about to speak at a press conference for the Washington Commanders. Well, I'm assuming we signed him if he's about to speak. But either way, he said that he wasn't just in the right space last year when he retired, but he feels that he had a lot left. And hey, shouts out to the Raiders, man, because that has to be annoying to sign somebody and they retire out of nowhere. But Michael Gallup said that he knew that when he retired, he wanted to come back. Gallup said the transition from Dallas after spending so much time with the Cowboys was difficult to process, and that's why he just ended up, even though he went to the Raiders, he felt like he still had some juice left in him mentally and emotionally. That detachment from the Cowboys and everything that he knew from, I mean, that's the team that drafted him. He spent 6 years there, and then they signed him to like a 5-year deal in 2022 or something like to 2021, whatever we said earlier, and then to just get kind of cut out of nowhere, it probably caught him by surprise, and he just expected to probably spend his entire career in Dallas, and then so that was kind of like a shock to him, probably a very emotional moment for him. And so he was like, well, the Raiders are interested in me, let me see if I could just block that out of my brain and do what I got to do on the field. And I guess it was too much for him to ignore. So now he's taking a year off of football. I guess he's mentally back to where he needs to be. I'm pretty sure I trust Adam Peters and all of those guys that they talked to him, evaluated him both physically and mentally as well to see where he's at. And if they felt like it was worth signing him, then I'm gonna trust that, hey, he's there mentally by now. But now going back to the fact that the reason he retired was because it was so weird being detached from everything that he knew with the Dallas Cowboys, top to bottom players, front office, coaches, everything like that. So maybe being around so many former Cowboys players and coaches will make him feel more at home here with a lot of different players, coaches, Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr., Tyler Biadasz, Dorrance Armstrong, like Noah Brown. We have some guys here, man. But at the same time, though, if new things make him feel off, then we can't promise you that he won't feel a little queasy from finally winning playoff games. You know what I'm saying? Because he's not used to that from his time with the Cowboys winning playoff games. You know what I'm saying? NFC Championship appearances and long seasons. Oh, he ain't used to that. So be ready for Michael Gallup to be dizzy if he's on the roster that long. I mean, he don't know nothing about that. But he gonna find out real quick if he actually makes the team what it's like to actually play football in January going on into February. He also said that he's excited to learn from the other receivers in the room, and he wants to bring competitiveness to the Commanders wide receiver room. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what he said when Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury, all of those guys talked to him before signing them to see if they wanted to sign him. Once he said that, that was the magic word, because you know they love competition in every single position group room. So once he said that, they were like, all right, bet, you got the right mentality, let's do it. Also, Gallup said that after every game they played Washington, he'd seek out Terry McLaurin and said that he would tell him, quote, "You're a dog, I enjoy watching you," unquote. So Michael Gallup and Terry McLaurin are immediately going to be good friends, just off of the fact that Michael Gallup did everything he could to even praise Terry McLaurin while he was still on the Cowboys. Gallup also said that Dan Quinn is a great dude you want to have as a head coach. Quote, "He's great people," unquote. And then Gallup also said and acknowledged he wouldn't be where he is right now without Dan Quinn, which is very impressive because Dan Quinn wasn't even the head coach for the Cowboys. He was the defensive coordinator while Michael Gallup was a wide receiver. You wouldn't even think that they necessarily brush shoulders that often, but Dan Quinn just has that effect on teams to, even if he's the defensive coordinator, even the wide receivers on that team highly respect this guy and appreciate what he's done for him. Gallup also said that he's already spoken to Jayden Daniels over FaceTime. He said like 30 minutes before the press conference, he already talked to Jayden Daniels, and he's already looking forward to linking up and getting to work this offseason, so he can't wait. He also talked about Washington's momentum and getting to play with Jayden Daniels. He said, quote, "I want to get behind that train," unquote. I'm telling you, yeah, I know a lot of y'all, you know, we didn't get a lot of the signings that y'all wanted in the offseason, but best believe we are still one of the top landing spots, one of the places that a lot of players want to play for, but a lot of those guys took more money to go elsewhere. We just didn't offer them as much money. But I'm pretty sure a lot of the guys that signed here and re-signed here from the last year's roster took less money to stay with us. And you only do that when the culture is this great and when you have a proven winning product. Which also takes me now to Deebo Samuel and what he had to say with his press conference immediately after Michael Gallup today. First of all, he talked about how requesting a trade was, quote, "tougher than you think," unquote. And said that it was tough to even have that conversation with Coach Kyle Shanahan. I guess because he really respects him and loves him like that. That's his boy. But he said both parties understood why it needed to happen, why this was just mutually beneficial for him to go ahead and move on to another team and for him to move out of the way. And then Deebo Samuel also explained why he wanted to join the Washington Commanders specifically. He said, quote, "I like winners," unquote. And we do too. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, man, you like us, we like you back, man. I like the fact that somebody that was on the 49ers that were just in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago is looking at the Commanders and saying, they're winners. This team isn't. I'm trying to go over there because they're on the up and up. The team I'm currently on, the 49ers, are on the way down trajectory-wise. He also said, quote, "They've already proven they can win. I'm just coming in to add my dog mentality," unquote. And that's pretty similar to the Michael Gallup answer that he said earlier, that quote, because basically both of them are saying that y'all are already doing y'all thing. Y'all already hooping. I'm just coming to add whatever I can to make the room more competitive, to bring a certain mentality to the group. I'm just coming to play my role. I'm not even necessarily imagining myself or projecting myself to have to come here and carry a bad team. I already know y'all got a good thing going. Y'all already have a well-oiled machine and all of that type of stuff. I'm just coming to make it a little bit better every way that I can. And I like the fact that people are looking at our team that way. They're not coming here as a charity case to, man, let me try to turn this thing around for this team. Let me try to give these guys some culture. Let me try to give these guys some swag, whatever. Like, we already got all of that. I just want to be a part of that and add to it any way that I can. He also explained why Washington was one of the 5 teams on his list, because apparently he had 5 teams after requesting a trade that he potentially wanted to go to. Again, he said, "I like winners." And then he also emphasized that he wants to bring his dog mentality. And he said, quote, "They're getting a motivated Deebo," unquote. And I love the sound of that, because I feel like a motivated Deebo is going to be a great Deebo. I mean, remember, I told y'all weeks ago, there was a 49ers reporter that went on John Combs' podcast, and John Combs straight up asked him about all of the off-the-field issues, overweight and things like that. He said whoever lands, before we even traded for Deebo Samuel, he said whoever lands Deebo Samuel, best believe with how prideful he is, you're going to get at the very least a very motivated version of Deebo Samuel, which is probably going to bring the best out of him that he potentially can give you at this point. Not saying that he's going to go back to maybe like his 2021 self where he was super hooping, But at the very least, you're going to get the best and the most out of whatever he can do right now. At the very least, you know, there will be no mental blocks from stopping him from achieving greatness. If anything, it will only be physical through age, through mileage of the type of the way that he plays the receiver position, almost like a running back in a sense, with a lot of backfield things, handoff screens, a lot of the contact, how aggressive he is, trying to run through people instead of around people. If Deebo Samuel isn't great, it's not going to be by a lack of focus, determination, and motivation, and all of the good mental words that I could basically give you right now that Dan Quinn would love to hear. But lastly, Deebo Samuel also talked about reports about him being overweight last season and being hurt and things like that. He said, quote, "That don't move me, man," unquote. Very quick. But at the same time, even though that was very limited in words, that was pretty big what he was basically trying to say. He's basically saying that all of that is false, and basically that the Commanders and Commanders fans shouldn't even have to be worried about if he's physically ready to ball out this season. He's basically saying overweight, injuries, man, that's just all noise that people were just throwing out there. That's not even true. That's basically what he's saying. And basically, again, to his next team, this current team, the Washington Commanders, you don't have anything to worry about, man. I mean, the fact that he barely addressed it lets you know that he just sees it as such a silly discussion and rumor that it's not even worth acknowledging to him. And I'm also willing to take him at face value. I'm willing to believe him because, I mean, until he gives me a reason not to at the very least. Because even say worst case scenario, even if he was overweight and or hurt last year for the 49ers, what's that got to do with us? I mean, I feel like we have the right culture and environment here to get the very best out of him. Again, whatever physically that could be, but mentally, I'm pretty sure we're going to get the very best of Deebo Samuel. Plus, the way that his contract is set up after his restructure yesterday, that I'm going to break down in a separate video, maybe later on tonight, this evening, there's no way you don't get the most motivated version of Deebo Samuel ever. By environment, culture, by just trying to prove the doubters wrong. And on top of that, the way that his contract is set up, boy, you better ball out if you want another good contract after this season. And also, just in case you missed it, Deebo Samuel will wear his most recent number, number 1, for the Washington Commanders. So that means that Noah Igbenogany does have to find a new number, because I'm very sure that Deebo Samuel gets priority over that number 1 number. So hey, man, I'm a huge Noah Igbenogany fan, and probably even a bigger fan of Noah Igbenogany than most of the Commanders fan base, man. But you got Deebo'd out your number, dog. That boy Noah Igbenogany, man. Man, my mama gave me that number. Hey, man, she gonna have to give you another one, man. It's over with. That thing took. Also, before we get up out of here, shouts out to my boy Ken Johannesson at Burgundy Burner. I mean, he does a ridiculous job of keeping everybody informed of exactly who the Commanders have met with, who they're going to meet with, all of that type of stuff, the pre-draft meetings process, all of that. He tweeted 6 hours ago, "Today will be my busiest of the pre-draft meetings process. No less than 22 programs will have their team pro day today, and it is also the busiest week." Also want to point out the fact that if there are 22 teams having their pro day today, you really should take note as to which guys we send to which ones, especially because there'll probably be a couple that we don't send anybody. So the ones that we do send somebody to, definitely take note of that, and then also pay attention to who's there. Because of say Dan Quinn or Adam Peters is at a specific pro day, then your antenna should really go up hey, we're probably seriously considering drafting this guy. Also, Ken Johannesson tweeted just a couple of hours after that, "All of the Commanders news of the day has really exploded over the last hour or so. Expecting more. Buckle up, hunker down." And whenever he comes out with all of that news eventually, I'm probably going to do that in a separate video as well to break down all of the draft stuff that's going on with the Washington Commanders. Maybe we'll talk about that tonight or maybe early tomorrow morning. We'll see. But just be on the lookout and have your antennas up, because this pre-draft process is very hectic this week and specifically today, just in case if you didn't know. Also, before we get up out of here, one very random but last thing. Just want to go ahead and give y'all the heads up and the warning. Apparently, ESPN will reportedly spend $2 billion to buy NFL Network, NFL Red Zone, and NFL Plus, which I do not like. I don't like that at all. I don't want ESPN owning all of that. Now there's no competition. Now they're going to monopolize the whole thing. Now there's no reason to put any extra effort or creativity behind anything, because who else you gonna go watch? After ESPN, I guess Fox, maybe CBS or something like that. So that's just too much of a monopoly for me, man. ESPN, please, somebody please stop this. But it sounds like it's probably on the way, but I'm very concerned about like Sunday Ticket and having access to the all 22 film and stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if ESPN does away with a lot of the things that we know and love about how we view the NFL and watching things like that. Worried about it, but I just really want to give y'all the heads up on that. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know if everything discussed in the video. Please still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you still follow that like button. Make sure, first of all, if you made it this far in the video, you are the GOAT, and I really want to make sure I shout y'all out and give y'all the fun fact that I promised y'all from the beginning of the video. The Commanders led all NFL teams in 2022. Of course, it's a 2022 fact. I don't know what's going on with that. With an average time of possession with 33 minutes and 5 seconds per game. I forgot about that we were controlling the clock that well in 2022. Well, that's your March 20th fact right there. Again, I'm gonna have you another one, a trivia question tomorrow for March 21st. And again, I really appreciate y'all. If you made it this far in the video, I salute you. Make sure you leave a like on the way out. And of course, let me know how you feel about the whole Michael Gallup signing. Let me know how you feel about what Deebo Samuel had to say in his press conference as well. And make sure you stay tuned. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.